Okay, so we're good. Okay, so our question is, a sixth grade student is frustrated and embarrassed throughout the year by an insensitive math teacher. In the seventh grade, the student becomes extremely anxious every time she goes into math class. So the first question is, what types of classical conditioning might the student be experiencing and why? The first one would be an unconditioned stimulus, which would be the insensitive math teacher is the way I kind of looked at it. Kind of just the beginning of just the teacher being insensitive, started that stimulus, started that problem, that stimulus, started that response for this student. Um, Also, the unconditioned response would be her embarrassment of, probably an embarrassment of being in that class and having the insensitive math teacher, that response with her. Um, then what was my other? Okay, conditioned stimulus would be going to math class, because at that point it's conditioned. She keeps going in there and she's conditioned to feel that way every time she goes. And the response is that she starts to feel anxious every time, which then just carries over into the next class, which then just keeps her in that same cycle of feeling that same way every time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of what I said. And like as far as the type of like classical conditioning, it seems like this is like punishment almost for, and it doesn't really say exactly what it is that's like making her embarrassed, but I mean, except for of course the teacher being insensitive. But it seems like presentation punishment, where the student is being shamed or scolded, simply just for their attempts possibly in the class. And so, as you said, there's an adverse stimulus, and it corresponds possibly to the student's work, and the teacher is decreasing that student's confidence and their ability to work. And page 109 states that some have claimed that the effects of presentation or aversive punishment could produce aggression, and that such punishment may cause students to avoid the setting in which it's used, which explains why she's anxious every time that she goes into math class.
Right. I
Mhm.
think it also kind of shows like how starting in one grade and then Lee is still staying with that student, to move on into another year of school, how big of an effect it has.
Yeah, I actually I talked with another teacher today, just talking about this situation, and we had a little a kid where we're in a group that we do third and fourth grade together, and they kind of rotate out with us. And every now and then, because we're pretty good with the behavioral stuff, they'll send a kindergartner or a first grader or something like that up to us that's having some issues. And so this one kid had been having issues in another class, and a teacher had just taken him and took him and just kind of shoved him in this other teacher's room. And he felt punished, even though she was tired of dealing with it. It was her, it wasn't really him. I mean, he was having behavior, but nothing was really explained to him. He was just taken and shoved in there. And so I didn't witness that, because that was from last year apparently. But the other day, this same little boy is brought in by this next year's teacher, and she just had him in there. We were doing clubs, and we all have to do clubs and do our part. And so she was going to a club, and he couldn't do the club or whatever. But anyway, she brought her to this teacher again, to the same teacher. And the minute he got to that door, he threw a fit, like he was screaming and crying. And I witnessed this. I'm like, what is going on? Where's wrong with Case? And why is he throwing this fit just being in there? And she had to like sit him down and say, you're not in trouble. You're just in here as a place to go and hang out. You're not. But he remembered that from last year, being just shoved in there
Yeah, it kind
because
of
someone could.
bars them for life, like they
Yeah.
they know.
Yeah, and I was like, wow, that's really good. That she goes, that kind of sounds like what you're talking about there. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly it. That's exactly what happened, because I wondered, why is he acting like this? I knew he wasn't in trouble. She knew he wasn't, but he didn't. He thought, because of what happened to him last time, he was. So that kind of, I just thought I'd share that little part, because that kind of tied in with it today.
Right.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I haven't experienced anything like that myself, other than remembering when I was a student and like when I would get scolded and then just hating showing back up to this teacher's class like the next day, or
Oh yeah.
if it just felt like kind of a bad teacher to me, like a teacher I just didn't like, then I can think back on grades where I was like, oh, that was my least favorite grade because I got scolded a lot or whatever happened.
Yeah.
It
So
makes us aware of how we're teaching, and that we're not that teacher. You know what I mean?
mhm.
You get frustrated, and you have to remember, like, we can have that effect on kids and not even mean to. We can just be frustrated with them and not mean to embarrass them or do that, and then we have that effect on them and not even be aware that we're doing it. So
Yeah.
it's kind of
Yeah. Okay, so moving on to the next one, what types of intrinsic and extrinsic rewards might motivate this student? I think at this point, intrinsic might not work yet. I think because of the student's fear, there has to be some kind of reversal of kind of what the previous teacher did, and so that reversal would probably include more extrinsic motivation, where the teacher is praising the student more and like kind of calling out in a positive way their efforts, and praising them for the work that they do. Of course, not just saying like, oh, like that's so good job, that's good, but like also like targeted and specific praise so that the student genuinely feels like the work they're doing is good.
Yeah. And then C is what types of reinforcement might positively influence this student. It kind of goes with what you were saying. I think to kind of reverse the role of what the previous teacher did, you're going to have to do like the praise, even like having them do like self-praise and stuff, pat themselves on the back. Hey, I did a good job in this class, or send notes home with a parent for that certain, maybe it's a certain subject or a certain, a certain room, or who knows. They have listed on 108 the practical reinforcers, and a lot of these probably wouldn't work, but the praise definitely would. Tangible reinforcers, or where they can be rewarded for their achievements in that class. I wouldn't say anything like the food or anything like that, but even home-based reinforcement, having them at home help, praise them for their good job in that class as well.
yeah. Just send those notes home or send those emails to get that coming from the other side. I like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good. That's good. I feel like every single time, or just about every time, like when you praise a student for their work, no matter who it is, especially a student though that's kind of having a rough day, it's like their whole demeanor
Oh
changes,
yeah.
and like it means a big deal.
Yeah, definitely.
And it goes off the mood of the teacher. I mean, if you have a teacher that's a grouchy in the mornings, I mean, that sets the tone for the whole day. And those kids are wild. Like, they sense it. They know. They
Oh
know.
yeah.
And then and then I have teachers that come in that are just like happy go lucky. They leave it at the door, and those kids are so good. And it's the same age group, same whole,
Hmm.
same setup in their classroom, same toys. But it's the attitude of the teacher that throws it in there, like, hey, we're either going to have a good day, or here comes my grouchy teacher. Let's, start
Yeah.
chaos. So, I mean,
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's what you bring in with you. Yeah, I have two third grades, and then I have the fourth grade, and they're
Yeah.
chaos constant. And I have to try to remember, like, don't leave what frustration I get with them, and I do get some, and I try my best to hide it. But then I have another third grader right after that that's super easy. But the minute they walk in, you're just like, the day's almost over, and you're tired from that fourth grade craziness, and you have to remember, like you
yeah.
said, leave, push it away, and you know, carry on.
And it all could be caused from what they've been through before. I know it for me, after reading this chapter, it kind of makes me think back, which I've only taught youngers. I've only been in early childhood education. So I still think now, like even when I get younger kids into my center, I'm just like, what have they been through? Like you'll have babies that scream, like you were saying, the behavioral part of when they get to a certain classroom and they're like, oh no, I mean, they'll latch themselves into that door frame to not go in. And I kind of
Mhm.
sit there like wondering, like, dang, like what happened so bad before, you
Mhm.
know, and I
Yeah,
hate that.
and
Yeah.
it could be little, and but they take it as something so much bigger.
Right.
We think we little, but they probably, and I tend to, you tend to forget. For me, I have third and fourth grade, and they're still littles. You know what I mean? And so you have to.
Yeah.
It's big to them. It might not be big to me, but it's big to them.
Yeah, yeah. And sometimes like some students are more so affected by kind of the tone of the teacher than others. I remember one morning, I just like basically kind of set out the rules, and it was just kind of in a firm tone. I wasn't, yelling or anything, but just I think the fact that it was just firm. And I got onto one student, who was talking, kind of trying to be distracting. But this other student way in the back, she was just very like, I don't know, like affected by that. And she just started like bawling.
Oh, God.
Um, yeah. So it definitely affects them. And I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, like what did I do? And a counselor came in and she was like, it's okay, it's a regular thing. But I mean, some
Yeah.
students are very, very affected.
They take it.
By
All of
that
us
sort
take it different.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So, going on to number 2, does punishment work? So I struggled with my answer on this.
Oh, right.
I'm
worked with-
50-50,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so after reading about it and learning about how punishment is defined, I say yes, it does work, but it has to be demonstrated to work first in order for it to be effective.
Yeah.
It's designed to discourage and weaken behavior, reinforcers strengthen the behavior. So I think if you use all you have, positive reinforcers, you go through every single step and then they do not work. I would rather have a kid punished than to be expelled or anything further than, because I've seen them expel a 3-year-old. I cannot grasp that concept. To me,
Yeah.
that's part of the gap problem,
Mhm.
but after reading this chapter and stuff, I was a big firm believer on zero punishment. Like
Really?
I do redirection, conscious discipline, zero punishment at all. And then like I get it where people come from with this. It says like certain children are good with going to the office. It gets them out of class. Others like to be scolded for the attention. So then you do have to enforce some kind of punishment, because everything else is not going to work. The types of punishment that it talked about were removal punishment, taking them out of the classroom, using timeouts has been found to reduce misbehavior. Then they talk about presentation punishment that's been they say it is not found to eliminate behaviors and they don't recommend using that. Behavioral theorists have claimed that this type of punishment should be resorted to as a last resort after reinforcement has been tried and failed. So,
Yeah. Yeah, I
so
agree.
my take on it is, yes, it does work, but it has to be applied effectively and there has to be the fine lines, I think.
Yeah.
Like you have to read the fine lines with it. Usually I think a lot of what they put in the chapter, the unpleasant consequences, reinforcers, that pre-MAC principle where they offer 2 choices, like, so you can clean the classroom up or you can wipe down the tables or whatever they're doing, like give them, 2 choices.
Yeah.
Make one of them that if you want them to do this choice, make this choice less desirable. They're going to pick the choice you want them to.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then about do not provide tangible rewards. If you do, be cautious. And then some of the negative effects of punishment that I've seen in this chapter are some of the punishments have been found not to eliminate behaviors. Some theorists have claimed that the effects have caused aggression in students to avoid settings in which it was used. That's one that I think we all ask, like, if you are not for it, you're just kind of like, well, why are teachers using it if it's not working? I think that's where that fine line comes in again. Like if it's not working, stop using it. Like every kid's different.
That's that's one of the biggest things about teaching is even within one class, it's different. And you hate that. Like I have one kid that they do one of the things that they do with the group that I'm in, and I'm new. So I kind of just went on with what they were doing, which was, like laps at recess time around in the like not running, like they have to walk,
Yeah.
you get 5 laps and then you can go do your regular recess time or something like that. And the other school I was at did that too. And but I have one kid, and so that wasn't working. Like I said, my fourth grade, they're insane. And they could walk all day. They don't care. They don't care. Fourth grade does not care if you
Yeah.
give them. So I was like, okay, we're gonna write sentences during recess time. And so most of them, a lot of the behavior has stopped. They have calmed down tremendously. But the one kid is like, he was like, can I just walk the laps? And that's when I knew, I'm like, okay, I'm on the right track with the sentences, because he was totally fine with the laps. And that
Right. Like, give
not,
me the other punishment.
Yeah.
yeah, you definitely can't do the other, because you're telling me right now you'd rather do it. And that's the whole point, is you shouldn't enjoy it. So, you but every kid was different. A lot of them, laps was fine, and they stopped, and then some needed the sentences, some didn't. So every kid is different. And I don't know how many kids you guys see in a day, but I see, like, I think there's about 75. And gosh, there's so many different things you have to try to figure out with kids, right? Like,
Yeah.
what every kid, and some need to be talked to more, some need more sternness, and punishment is definitely, I agree with you. I'm 50-50. Like, there's a time when it doesn't work. And I think I read somewhere, and I don't remember, I don't think it was in the book, and I don't remember where it was, but that it just can escalate a cycle of conflict. Because and I have that with one child, that he's just going to keep going round and round with me. And it doesn't matter what you do.
Right.
If you just stop somewhere there and be like, okay, just do this. If you just keep doing those, he just gets more, it just escalates. You know what I mean? It doesn't work for him. There's certain things that don't work for him. And that's one of them. And I don't agree with that. I hate that it feels like sometimes he's getting off easy by having to do something that a
Right.
lot of the others don't have to do.
We had one
But
that was like that, and we'd have to take him out of the room. And
Mhm.
it was a treat to him,
Yeah.
because he would come to my office and hang out with me, and he was so good with me. Like, I'm talking the perfect angel child, because we had one-on-one. Rough home life, he needed that attention. But then it started becoming like, oh, I'm gonna throw this chair now because I know I'm getting out of here. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's just got to the point, like, you've got to find that middle ground with them. Like, it's hard.
And every out, I think I found this too. I have one child that we've had like a really good week and a half, and then today he was disrespectful to me, and I had to like talk to him later on once he calmed down. And I'm like, every time I think I've got him figured out, then I got to reassess again, because I don't. Maybe it's something that happened at home. Maybe it's something that happened in that class before. I don't know, but today was like, what happened? We were in a good place, and so you have to reassess even with the same kid. Oh, not just all the different kids.
Right.
You have to assess with that same kid sometimes and try something different. So
Yeah.
the juggling, it's juggling. I think that's what we do.
Yep.
Yep.
We
And I
do.
think that's, yeah, I think that's why it's 50-50 too. Because like you said, like with some kids, taking them out of the class worked, and other kids, like the one that you had the one-on-ones with, it didn't so much, because they realized, oh, this is actually a reward because I get to get out of the class and have more attention. And so I literally had a student today, that was the exact case. And so with those students, I think actually, what is it? Reinforcement, positive reinforcement, or even negative reinforcement, some sort of reinforcement would work better, because they're just not react like punishment is more seen as a negative thing. But I think bringing a more positive thing into the situation can kind of help them to feel more safe and comfortable in the school setting. And on page 108, it says that even punishments might serve as reinforcers,
Yeah.
because it gains attention from the classmates, which might increase their status. So it's really, really tricky. Like y'all said,
It's
it's
like
juggling.
individualized, I guess I would say. Because
Yes, I
it's
feel
gotta
like
be
every student
different
needs,
for, yeah.
yes, every student needs an individualized discipline plan. Um,
Yeah.
I
And
have
yeah,
110. I gotta make 110.
yeah. And you
it's
make
so
it week later, you got to make another one for that kid because he has a bad day at home or somewhere else, and then
Yeah.
that doesn't.
right, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So, and there actually was the student that I mentioned from today. So the whole class had kind of a uniform discipline plan, and he had his very own. And honestly, I think that was probably a great way to go, because compared to how I heard he was at another time to how he was, when I met him, totally different. So some of those kids just need that more focused, individualized plan. And he actually got rewarded when he exhibited good behavior. And you know, kind of when he was struggling, he would just kind of get like a quick like reminder of like how to act. And sometimes that's all he really needed. Other times he would need to be taken out of the classroom, or somebody was assigned to him. But yeah,
Yeah.
it varies.
Yep.
So
All right. I think we answered everything. The only other thing that I have on here, which I think we answered in discussion, was if it's ineffective, produces negative effects, why do so many teachers rely on it so much? Which I think we talked about that too. I mean, you have to have it to an extent. And then I think that's all of it. All right, guys.
I think we do.
All right, you guys have a good night.
You too.
all right,
Thanks.
y'all.